first round of the 2022 NFL draft for the Minnesota Vikings was pretty wild. Pretty wild. Vikings Twitter was
interesting.
Vikings Twitter was a very, very interesting place after what occurred. So obviously the Minnesota Vikings were, supposed to pick originally at pick 12. So, it starts to go through. Derek Stingley goes number 3. Sauce Gardner goes number 4. Garrett Wilson gets taken at number, I believe he was number 9.
10, I believe.
10? Was it 10? And then Chris Olave went the next pick. So, at that point, you're starting to see all these names come off the board.
Yeah.
And we both had, we're talking about during the live stream. As soon as that happened, there was 2 options in our mind. One was Kyle Hamilton and one was trading back because Hamilton did end up dropping to 12. And that's kind of where the intrigue started. So what the Vikings decided to do was make the trade back with the Detroit Lions. So the details of that trade is, what kind of started off the frustration, I think, for the fans was the fact you traded within division. But we even kind of mentioned during the stream that trading with the Lions, they're the one team in this division I would like to trade with because
or at least I wouldn't care as much because it's
still find a way to screw it up. They didn't. Yeah. They took our pick, so they got 12 and 46, and we got 32, 34, and 66, which is actually it's good. But with some of the other trades that had happened, you felt like we could have had more. Maybe instead of giving up 46, we could have given up 77.
Yeah.
What added to the misery was that the Lions traded up to 12 and grabbed Jamison Williams, a guy that I really liked in this draft. Jamie, I know you liked him a lot too. If it wasn't for his knee, he probably would have been a top 5 pick. Easy.
Been, yeah.
And the Lions get him to terrorize us for the rest of eternity until he's out of the league. But something I do want to toss in there is Green Bay didn't get him. And that is the point that I think people miss is I think Kwesi's okay with giving him to Detroit, but not Green Bay, which, we'll get into something like that in our next video with receivers and trades and whatnot. But so I see where the fan base got a little bit frustrated when this initially happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
Looking at it now, things look a little bit different. We're recording this on day 2 after the Vikings pick in the 3rd round. It's looking a little better now, but man, it was an absolutely wild night, and it was just funny looking at all the people panicking on Twitter. Obviously they came back a little. It was fun. It's some fun stuff. Obviously, like I said, now it looks a lot better than it did before. In certain ways, I still feel like there might be some reaches, but we'll get into that in a later video.
Right.
What do you think, man? It was nuts.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I would say, it is still, even looking back, it is even, we know what happens in the 2nd round and everything. You do feel like we should have still got more value. I know a lot of people had their, what is that, like the points, the draft point thing, trade thing or whatever. And some people, like the main one was like, all right, we got killed on that trade. And then there's some other ones that said we actually benefited from it. Most of the time when you see someone move from 12 to 32, you definitely get more than what we have. This was a draft with not a lot of good quarterbacks, and it's even more obvious than I thought. Pickett was the only one in the 1st round. The next video, I will probably dive into a little bit more of that. But yeah, so I think I don't think anybody was going to get enough value. But I have to say, with Hamilton there at 12, and for us to move back and not get as much value as we really would have hoped to move all the way to 32, and then we end up picking Lewis Cine. So we ended up picking Lewis Cine, and who is another safety. So immediately I was pretty upset. I was already kind of buzzkilled by the trade because I was like, we should have got more for that. And then we ended up picking Cine, and it's nothing to do with him. Like, I think he's a really good player, and we'll dive deep into him. But at the time, you're like, we had Hamilton there at 12, and then we moved back for not great enough value, and we still end up getting a safety anyways. So I think that was kind of confusing to me. And I'm feeling a little bit better about it now since we kind of know what happened in the 2nd round and stuff like that. But overall, I really like Lewis Cine, and he's a massive hitter. And one thing, we dived into a lot of these players. I've dived into his highlights before, but actually, for whatever reason, I didn't see the Kyle Pitts hit until later on. And that hit was an absolute monster. It was pretty dangerous, I guess, but still, it has Hitman all over it. Yep. And that's an intangible that you can't teach.
Right. And he's going to get to learn
a big hitter.
He's going to have to learn from Hitman too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, right off the bat, like if we're talking about seeing, yeah, he's a massive hitter, and then besides that, like something you can't teach, and then besides that, he's an athletic freak. I mean,
Yeah.
runs a
Yeah.
4.37. We're gonna dive into it, like I said, but still, athletic freak, huge hitter. Having that athleticism on top of all that, it it kind of raises his ceiling. He's not a finished product at all. So it'll be interesting to dive in a little bit more and see what happens with that. But
Yeah, definitely. But something I did want to toss out there is, I'm reading all this stuff about, like, I read Kyle Hamilton's name probably more times than I did leading up to the draft. Now, I liked Kyle Hamilton. I like what I saw from him, but all of this comes down to the draft board of Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, Kevin O'Connell, the Minnesota Vikings. If they didn't see enough value in Hamilton to pick at 12, and they had no other options to trade back, but they were able to get the haul they got, then he's going to do that. What we think to them does not really matter. I mean, obviously the fan, it is what it is. But, I was thinking that all day long. It's like, if he saw better value in that trade than he did in Hamilton at 12, then, you do that. If you feel like you're going to put yourself in a better spot all around for the whole draft by making that move, then I have no issues with him doing that at all. And he ended up, at the end of the day, with some more wheeling and dealing, he ended up getting pretty solid value back for it. So, and to still get, I know everybody said, well, you passed on the best safety in the draft to take this other guy, but I don't know. I think it all comes down to the draft board of Kwesi. It all comes down to how he viewed these things, how he had things, because he's talking about the grading, especially in a draft like this, when the talent isn't as, like, there's not as huge of a peak of talent, especially with quarterbacks and things, as there are in other drafts. After the first little bit, maybe he thought after 10 picks, there's no value. So if one of those top 10 sneaks to us and someone takes a quarterback, we're in a good spot. If they don't, we move down, we acquire more picks, we go from there. Could very well be what happened. I'm not saying it did, but
well, it's not like anyone else made any crazy trades other than like the AJ Brown and the Marquise Brown thing, like actual players. But usually you'll see someone trade up and have first rounds for this year, next, or either 2 first rounds this year or a first round for next year. We didn't see any of that by any team. So it's pretty obvious that the amount of talent, at least, just wasn't worth trading up for, or it was deep enough where people felt like they could wait for a player that was also really good.
Right, for sure. But anyway, this video is all about, not all about, but this video is about the pick we did make. Lewis Cine out of Georgia, defensive MVP of the national championship game. The guy's been there, done that, won the title. He knows how to win. He's a great player. Listening to him talk, I think I listened to his press conferences today. An impressive young man. A lot to like about him. He seems super nice, calm demeanor, just like Harrison Smith, calm demeanor off the field, a badass on the field. I think he's going to be a really good fit on this football team. I think he's really going to help out that secondary a lot. Should we jump into his stats?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go into stats.
But before we do that,
before we do that, I want to thank everybody for watching the GG Sport podcast of the Minnesota Vikings, where we endure heartbreak but always bleed purple. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell, get notifications for more of our video and all that good stuff. The drafts, wrapping up here pretty quickly, and it's going to be the new season, so it's exciting. Everything's brand new coach, new GM, all that good stuff. So let's go.
Let's roll. All right. So looking at some of his stats here, let's look at this most recent season, national title season. Obviously, junior, played in all 15 games, 43 solo tackles, 30 assisted tackles, 73 total, 2 tackles for loss, 1 interception, 8-yard return on the interception, and 9 passes defended. The stats, especially with the safety, I feel like sometimes the stats don't always tell the whole story. He's not.
Definitely.
And part of the weaknesses you read about the kid is when it comes to pure like pass coverage, it's where he struggles a little bit. But at the end of the day, he's a hard-hitting safety, into the box, run-stopping safety. He had a couple plays you see him knock the ball loose when a receiver catches it. So you got to look. You look at the base stats and you're like, I don't understand it. But if you watch his highlight tape, the guy's a hammer, an absolute nail driver type hitter, and he's going to help out the back end of that defense for sure.
Yeah, and you said, 73 tackles from your safety position is fantastic. Like, that's a really good amount of tackles from a safety.
Right.
That you're getting in linebacker territory. But I did want to mention too, so for PFF, he had a grade of 82.4. So I want to just say that. So yeah, so that's a very solid grade.
Oh
At the
yeah,
very least, very good grade.
definitely.
I also wanted to say that I don't know, I forgot who it was, but there's a tweet recently that said that he allowed 0 touchdowns. So we were talking about how people worry about his coverage and things like that, but he allowed 0 touchdowns and 500 snaps played for any plays that he was in coverage, which I guess is the most snaps for any player in college who did not allow a touchdown.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that shows that's a very positive thing to say about someone's coverage. So
Right.
I think his coverage is probably underrated, which is huge. And not, I mean, he just has that speed. We'll dive into his combine stuff, I guess, a little bit in a
Yeah.
bit here, but
That's when
he
we'll
has,
get more into his negatives negatives and positives when we
yeah,
talk
we'll
about
dive
that
deep
stuff.
into all that stuff. But, so yeah, I think the coverage thing is a little overrated or whatever, or underrated. But another thing I want to say, I'm going to botch these numbers, but I think he had, so it says his career, so 144 career tackles.
Yep.
And I think he only had like 14 missed tackles out of all of that. I'm pretty sure the number, it's in the teens for sure,
Right.
but that's just insane. 144 tackles. You only missed 14 tackles in your entire career. So at the very least, he's just insane. Not to mention just a good tackler, but he's just that hard hitter. I mean, we talked about the Kyle Pitts thing. It's insane, but
right, for sure.
Yeah.
As Desmond Ridder is the second quarterback taken in the draft, I just saw that. Just had to toss that in there.
Ooh.
But anyway, so yeah, I mean, like I said, look at the stats. Yes, the tackles are great, and that's exactly what you want to see from a man in his position. I think there's a lot of room for the kid to grow as well. He's a young kid, and I'm excited to see what he does. So
yeah, I like his attitude.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we got a good player. Yeah, Hamilton was there, and you know, it is kind of hard to pass up a guy like Hamilton since he was considered one of the better safeties coming to draft in a long time. But you take all that stuff away, and I think at 32 we got ourselves a stud in Cine.
Definitely. And the first thing when we jump over here to his draft profile, this is one thing that he has that Kyle Hamilton does not. This speed, 4.37 40. And it shows in his tape. There's a couple plays they show where he comes from off the screen like a laser, makes a tackle for loss on some running backs and stuff like that. It's amazing.
Yeah, plus 36 and a half vert and a 133 broad. I mean, he's just athletic, very athletic, and especially like to see that in your safety.
6'2", 199, 32 1/4 inch arms, 9 3/8 inch hands. I think in like probably 3-4 years from now, maybe even less than that, we'll be doing another terrible draft profile review, and his is going to be on there with this.
Yep.
They gave him a 6.26 prospect grade, eventually be average starter. That's not gonna happen. He's gonna blow those. He's gonna blow those.
NFL.com is like the one that everyone else was much higher than NFL.com.
For sure. And after the pick, there's a lot. I read nothing but good things. The only negatives I read were about the value of the trade for the Vikings.
Yeah.
And again, I've seen this a lot. You can hate the trade at its core, but still like the player. And I think they got an absolute baller in Lewis Cine. And there's going to be a lot of people that agree. Looking at some of his stuff here, draft projection of round 2, which if you the bottom of the first round, you could almost say round 2. NFL comparison, Anthony Harris. If he turns out like the Anthony Harris that we had before his last season, I am 100% fine with that. Anthony Harris was a ball-hawking, hard-hitting safety. His last season with us kind of went south. I don't know why, but the only reason we didn't keep Anthony Harris is he was going to cost us too much money. It had nothing to do with his level of play or anything. So I'm a huge fan of that. I'll run through his strengths quick. Plays with NFL caliber demeanor, runs alley with intent to deliver a message, can galvanize a defense with his hitting, rose to the occasion in big moments, hustles downhill with timely response to cutoff run options, fluid switching from route to route in zone, awareness to race receivers to designated catch spots, adequate man coverage underneath, hammers at pass catchers to pop throws loose, mentality to stand out on special teams coverage. So a lot of strengths to like. And one thing that it doesn't talk about is the character of the kid. I know Kevin O'Connell brought up a point that, obviously they talked to a lot of Georgia defensive players because Georgia's defense was the top defense in college football this year. And they asked a lot of them, like, what one player would you take with you to the NFL? And a lot of people said Lewis Cine, just because of his mentality, because of the way he plays defense. And yeah, there's a lot to like if you look at these positives with this kid.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, he's just he's it's I think it's gonna work really nice because one another thing about getting a safety, a lot of fans were excited and are still excited about buying him next year, and he played fantastic in his limited opportunity as a rookie, and then now going into this year, it's I'm more excited because he's like he's saying he's going to be the best football player of all time over Tom Brady and all that stuff. I mean, yeah, that's quite a stretch, but obviously you got to love the confidence. And so now we got this other safety. So you're kind of wondering what's going to happen. I know Kwesi right out his what's it called, his press conference right after the first round of the draft said that pretty much our jobs is to get our best players on the field at all times. So I think they have a plan in place to kind of try to get Bynum and Cine on the field at the same time, especially in nickel situations where we can have Cine, especially since he's that big of a hitter, where he can kind of play that nickel role.
Right.
So that part's really cool. The fact that they mentioned that and talked about it, because I was wondering like, what are you going to do with that? But then if you use him as kind of even a little bit of a hybrid, especially that he can run around the field that quickly and hit and tackle, it's super exciting.
Yeah.
It's an A, like I saw someone tweet it was an A+ pick at the time, an F trade. I wouldn't even say an F. I would say like a D+ trade, and then an
I
A.
wouldn't even say a D+ trade. You got to give it a little higher than that. I think. I personally, even my initial reaction was like, okay, that's fine. Like, I get it. I understand not wanting to go at 46, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. We already talked about that.
Well, that was the whole thing, is we didn't want to get rid of
right.
We wish we didn't get rid of the 46, but yeah.
But so anyway, but let's dive into those weaknesses that they have of him. So average size and play strength, segmented and bumpy in his back pedal, can improve eye balancing and coverage. Hips and feet aren't always on the same page. Loses his leverage and coverage at times. Might need more mass than an NFL tackler. Average body control, flowing to tackle. Angles in run support can be a little steep. So the biggest, and that's one of the biggest knocks I've heard on him. Two of the things. One of them is, if you read most of these, it's all about coverage. I think in the NFL, I think with this defense, I think they'll notice that and they'll work with him on it. And I don't think they're going to put him in a lot of positions early on where he's going to have to do a lot of, straight up coverage. So I think that's going to help him with those weaknesses. Obviously, as you're doing that, you can still work with him in practice, trying to teach him better techniques. So, but I think he's got a lot of instincts with that type of stuff, but it's just going to take a little more refinement of his craft. And then obviously, if you want to talk about his size, adding size is one of the easiest things you can do to a football player. Get him on a protein, or I don't know about all the medicals and stuff.
Yeah, just on a diet, especially when you have professional nutrition.
Exactly, right, with a health program. Get him on a strength diet. Add some good mass to this guy. Get him a little bit bigger. Might slow him down a little bit, but I have seen a couple things too where some people say he tackles a little bit high and he might get dragged around a little bit. But again, all easy stuff to fix with a little bit more size.
At least you can fix it. There's some things you can't fix, and he doesn't have any of those things that you can't fix.
It's all coachable. It's all coachable. So yeah, man. Overall, like I said, I'm very happy with this pick. Obviously, what got us there is what a lot of people are questioning. But I think the kid's going to be an absolute stud player. I think he's going to come in. I think he's going to start right away for this team.
Yeah,
I'm ready to go with him, man. I'm excited to see. I'm excited to get him on the field and see what he can do, especially next to Harrison Smith, man. With some of our other picks that we made, it's gonna be fun.
So let's end this with some grades here. So we'll just grade him. We're not going to grade the first round or anything in general.
Grade the pick itself. You're saying?
Yep.
Okay. If I'm going to grade the Lewis Cine pick again, when I first saw it, I think like you said, the whole night was was a little bit of a buzzkill. Got a little late. It is what it is. So I'm sitting there looking at it. I'm just like, I've never heard of this guy because I didn't do a ton of research into the safeties. So I'm like, I just don't know who this is. But the more I looked him up and the more I kind of read things about him, the more I did kind of fall in love with the player. So if I'm going to give it a grade, I'm going to give it like a B+, I think. Because it's not, it's not super flashy, which is what you look for in the draft in the first round. But looking at everything that we got going on with this kid, and yeah, you did pass up on a, what feels like a surefire thing like Kyle Hamilton. But, I do feel like this kid's going to be good. I think it's, number 32 overall, where people grade him as a second round or whatever.
Yeah.
I think a B+ is a very fair grade. And something I do want to point out is I had never heard of Harrison Smith going into the 2012 draft either, and look how that turned out. So
Yeah.
B+ is a fair grade. I feel like if I gave it an A, I get raked across the coals. So I'll go B+.
I'm gonna go with the B+ as well. I could see the A. I think he wasn't the player at the time that I think was the best pick for us. We ended up going with him, and I'll give him the B+ for that, because maybe he would have been considered a second rounder if we didn't pick him. But the guy that I would have probably picked instead of him is a guy named Andrew Booth. So I mean, that kind of, yeah, to be continued.
Right. But yeah, man, I'm really excited to see what this kid can do. Solid first round pick. A lot of people said Kwesi killed it. So I'm excited, man. So anyway, if you want to check out some of our other stuff, click the link up here. Check out some of our other videos. Do not forget, most importantly, subscribe to the channel right down here. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts on the pick down in the comment section. And we will see you guys in the next episode of the GG Sports Podcast, talking about the second and third rounds.
SKOL Vikes.